Hi, I'm Dr. Scott.
And I'm Dr. Shiloh.
And this is LA Not So Confidential, the forensic psychology and true crime podcast.
Each episode, we explore the intersection of psychology, the criminal justice system, and entertainment.
Welcome Behind the Couch. Today's live stream conversation features Detective Mike Weber discussing his book, The Mother Next Door, Medicine, Deception, and Munchausen by Proxy.
Welcome Behind the Couch, everybody.
Yeah, welcome to Behind the Couch, our second to last Behind the Couch.
Oh my gosh, home stretch.
So prepare emotionally, everyone, as we will be doing the same. We're going to be taking good care of ourselves, and we want our listeners to take care of themselves as well.
Yeah.
And we just recorded our third to last episode, which everybody, you're going to love. This is like back to the basics, forensic psych issue on a paraphilia. It's like Dr. Shiloh's specialty. It's awesome.
It sure is. It sure is. It's a good one. Yeah. One that I've had in my notes for a while to get to. Didn't really think it was that substantive. And then boom, timing is everything. So you guys will really enjoy that. With that, we have some new Patreon members that we want to get to. So at the associate level, thank you so much to Liz, Andrea B, Penny W, Anwar, and Ashley F. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And then we have a new doctorate level Patreon member, which is Jennifer F. So thank you, Jennifer. Your swag pack will be going out soon. And just as a reminder, everyone who joins, and then up until now, when October hits, there is still going to be some sporadic content that you guys will get first. If we even put it out on YouTube, somewhere down the line, you all will have access to it first and foremost. And your Patreon contribution will automatically go down to just $1 a month if you choose to stay on to have some of that stuff.
Which also includes access to our Discord channel where we hop on multiple times throughout the week, have chats with people, post stuff, have discussions. That will stay active for the foreseeable future. I can't promise it'll be forever, but definitely we will keep that going and keep everyone apprised of any kind of changes that come up.
Exactly. We'll open up the Discord to everyone at that point. So yeah, we can have some more folks in there to chat about whatever is going on in the world of forensic psychology and crime, and just saying hello to some of our friends. Hey, Abby, thanks for being here. With that, I think we'll go ahead and bring on our guest.
We are going to welcome Detective Mike Weber, who has 40 years of law enforcement experience, including 15 years as a crimes against children investigator. He has investigated over 50 reports of medical child abuse that have led to 13 convictions, 3 cases pending trial currently. Detective Weber has co-authored an APSAC best practices guideline on medical child abuse titled Munchausen by Proxy, Clinical and Case Management, and authored a separate article in the same issue of the Advisor titled Investigation of Factitious Disorder Imposed on Another and Medical Child Abuse. We always love our colleagues that use the appropriate diagnosis and terminology. That's awesome. He also authored Investigating Medical Child Abuse for the FBI Law Enforcement Bulletin Journal of August 2018. And Weber was awarded the 2016 NCMEC Texas Hero for Children Award for the investigation of Geronimo Aguilar and medical child abuse cases. He's also currently assigned to investigate crimes against children for the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office and handles all reports of medical child abuse in Tarrant County. Detective Weber contributes to the true crime educational podcast, Nobody Should Believe Me, which examines medical child abuse through previous cases. It is phenomenal. Highly, highly recommend listening to this. And he's also co-authored the true crime novel, The Mother Next Door with Andrea Dunlop. Dr. Shiloh, I did not think it was possible, but we've now actually met someone who is clearly busier than the two of us put together.
He is. Hello. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me. And just one little correction to the bio. I did recently retire, so now I am retired / reserve detective. I'm still doing 16 hours for free, but a month. But yeah, I am retired. I'm out. 40 years is enough.
Wow.
Yes,
Congratulations.
Congratulations. It's a hard decision.
For you. Yeah.
But congrats.
Yeah.
So this was such a welcomed book to read. I mean, it has been 4 years since Scott and I did our tackling of factitious disorder on our podcast. It was one of the more rare 2-parters that we had to do. And we're not afraid to do a 2-hour show. So it was really nice to revisit the topic through your experience and your expertise. And I know we have fans of the podcast, Nobody Should Believe Me, that we're really looking forward to this interview and hearing from you because they've followed that and they have read the book. Before we jump into the book, we're always interested to know our guests' sort of origin story into their chosen profession. We would love to hear a little bit why and how you fell into law enforcement.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was 19 working at Larry's Shoes and Boots place here in Fort Worth as a stalker, immature 19-year-old, and 23-year-old that was working there with us. He was cool, you see. He had a Corvette.
Of course.
So he comes in one day and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to the police academy." I'm like, "Why do you want to do that? They give me tickets." He's like, "Well, if you're a cop, other cops don't give you tickets." And I was like, "How much you pay?" He's like, "A lot more than here." I'm like, "I want to be a cop." So that's my great origin story to being a police officer.
Love it.
After that, I went back to college, got my degree, was going to leave, and then I didn't. And then I just stayed for 40 years.
And then you just happened to stay for 40 years. A little rundown, what sort of assignments did you work before landing in this specialty?
Yeah, I worked patrol, and then I was assigned to narcotics. And I was at a tiny police department, thank God, when I first started, because I didn't know what I was doing. And when I graduated college, I think my chief was trying to get me to go to a bigger department because he assigned me to a narcotics unit in Arlington, Texas, home of the Rangers, home of the Cowboys, big city. And I worked in that unit with, it's a mesh unit with other agencies. And I worked in that unit for 2 years. And then I went to Mansfield PD, a slightly bigger agency, because I couldn't get on with Arlington because I had terrible eyes, and it was before American with Disabilities. And they had a limit on eyesight. So I go to Mansfield. I worked there for 2.5, 3 years. I get eye surgery. Of course, 2 months after I get eye surgery, American with Disabilities passes. But I wait a year, and then I apply to Arlington. I go there in 95. And then I go back into narcotics at Arlington. I work narcotics there for a full 4 years. And then you have to rotate out after 4 years. I went back to patrol about a year and a half into patrol. I'm like, I want to go back into investigations, want something with a little challenge. When I was in narcotics, my lieutenant's desk was 10 feet away. My sergeant's desk was 5 feet away, right? And so this position came open in crimes against children, and there was someone on my shift who had worked up there and come back to patrol. So I met with her, and I'm like, what is this child advocacy center place that they're talking about? She's like, "Oh, that's a building. It's not the police department. It's, off-site, and you office there, and you work on your child abuse cases there." I'm like, "Well, where's my sergeant?" She's like, "He's at the main station." I'm like, "Where's my lieutenant?" "He's at the main station." I'm like, "Sign me up."
Perfect.
I wanted to work independently without people hovering over my shoulder.
Yeah, put me on my own island and I can do my work.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. And of course, once I got in there, I realized there's some of the hardest cases that you're going to get in law enforcement. They were extremely challenging. And I thought, I think I got pretty good at it. And, I'd had about 24 years in between all three of these places when a spot came open at the DA's office and their crimes against children's unit. And I put in for that, and I got that as an investigator.
A very common path here in California as well, when people just aren't quite ready to be finished with investigations, to go over to the various DA offices in the counties here, especially in Southern and Northern California. We have so many counties. It's a good, I don't know if I would say wind down is the right terminology, because, and clearly from your experience, there was enough work to do, certainly, but it just seems like a different vibe and a different way to sort of transition out of the job eventually.
Well, and it depends on the DA's office you work for and who the elected DA is that you're working for at the time.
Totally.
If you read the book, you'll understand that for sure.
Absolutely. And you spell that out. That is spelled out really well about the challenges in that.
Be careful who you vote for, people.
Yeah. So when that first case of medical child abuse crossed your desk, was there an immediate curiosity there to dive in, or did it feel overwhelming and intimidating to try and figure it out or learn about it? What was your immediate response?
Well, the first case I got was their jurisdictional issues, all the surgeries, which can be the actual injury to a child charging element in my state. They had happened out of state, and the local police department wanted nothing to do with the case. They did not want to investigate it. And so first thing I did is I went to my child abuse pediatrician, and I'm like, "Hey, how are doctors doing these procedures?" She's like, Well, they rely on the history provided by the caregiver. The kids usually can't talk, or they're taught not to, or they're coached to say things that aren't true. And the doctors in medical school are trained to rely on that history from the provider. And what I've learned later is these offenders pick ailments that are extremely hard to medically test for. That's why we see this over and over and over again with gastro issues, with seizure disorders. We see the same thing over and over again. And she's like, if you go to the doctor, my child abuse pediatrician is like, if you go to the doctor telling your arm hurts, I'm not going to look at your leg. And, that immediately made sense to me. To me. You would be surprised how many people have such a hard time digesting that piece of information and how much they put on doctors who receive no training in this abuse. Whoever listens to this podcast is going to know probably more about this abuse than pediatricians will that have not sought training on their own for this, because it's not provided in most medical schools that I'm aware of. And there's no CLEs in my state for it, for sure.
Yeah, it seems like that kind of problem goes hand in hand with the way we look at hierarchy of power in our culture. I came from the Deep South, and when I was raised, you did not question authority figures, and doctors definitely fit in that. Like if the doctor says you have ailment A, you do not question it at all. And now, it is more important for us to be informed consumers of our own health care, but then that makes it more complicated, right? Because the doctor, they have blinders on because they're supposed to be getting through a day, and with managed care, it just becomes more complex. But that complexity allows these perpetrators to get away with horrible abuses. So before we go too far afield, can you please give us your overview of what medical child abuse, which is also known as Munchausen by proxy, what it is and what it is not, and how, from your perspective in law enforcement, how does it differ from other forms of child abuse?
It is not an anxious parent. That is what none of those terms are. This is very planned, deliberate behavior. Munchausen by proxy is a broad term that encompasses both medical child abuse and factitious disorder imposed on another. Medical child abuse is a medical diagnosis. Factitious disorder imposed on another is a psychological diagnosis. The difference between those two is that for it to be factitious disorder imposed on another, the main motivating factor has to be something intrinsic. You're not doing it for external gain. Otherwise, it's malingering by proxy. You're doing it for attention, love, whatever something intrinsic is driving you to do. Maybe you just get a charge out of fooling people. Whatever is driving you, that's what you do. That's why you do it. Medical child abuse does not care about motive. It's just, it doesn't care if you're doing it for money. It doesn't care why you're doing it, just that you are doing it. And, that's good because it's not up to a medical doctor to determine a motive. That is my job as a police officer, to determine motive. Now, it becomes important to me to kind of demonstrate what the motive is, right? That's on me. And I can tell you that in every case that I've worked, well, maybe except for one, I've had maybe one malingering by proxy case. Every other one, there has been a definite attention-seeking element to that case.
And was that one for financial gain of some sort?
Financial gain. Well, and even in that one, there was also a falsifying a cancer diagnosis in the perpetrator herself.
Okay.
So you often have these mixed bags, right? I mean, a lot of them get Make-A-Wish trips. A lot of them do GoFundMes. So you also have a financial motive, but is it the main motivation? Or is that just kind of a sidekick of the original reason for doing it?
Yeah, that I feel like that could be an hours long discussion right there because of the individual.
And y'all feel free to cut me off at any time.
No, that's what we're here. I'm actually just saying that would be a fascinating conversation with your experience and exposure to these different perpetrators. There's an element of, I want what I want, a very childlike presentation.
Absolutely.
Just you see all the stuff, all the swag that they get because of their grift. And anyway, that's another discussion. I don't want to get too far afield because we have so much information to get from you, because Dr. Shiloh and I, as psychologists, and both of us previously worked in sex offender assessment and treatment, we thought that your analogy to pedophilic disorder was absolutely spot on. And I would love, I'd love to hear you riff on it. Like, just go.
Sure. But to start that, I will tell you that the chief of the criminal division of the Tarrant County DA's office would vehemently disagree with you.
Okay.
She thinks that's trying to scare attendees in trainings.
Well, we disagree. We'd love for you to explain that thinking to
I disagree
our audience.
also. Yeah, Dr. Mark Feldman disagrees. Mary Sanders disagrees. All the experts disagree, but some people you can't convince. Yeah, I do. It's very much I call it a compulsion. Andrea compares it to addiction. I don't necessarily like that comparison because your addiction, you are hurting people around you, but you're mainly physically harming yourself. There's physical harm outside of you in this abuse. I refer to it as a compulsion. And what we've seen, like the Jessica Jones case, we just got a 60-year sentence on last August. What we see with these advanced offenders who are getting very complicated surgeries or inducing symptoms in their child, we see that compulsion never goes away. And a great illustration of that is season 6 of the podcast, Nobody Should Believe Me. Everyone should listen to that. I'm pumping that up as much as I can. It's not any of my cases, but that offender, poisoned her first child, was caught 50 times, putting feces in the child's tracheotomy and squirting water down the tracheotomy, and got a very light 6-month prison sentence, got out, waited a year, had another baby boy. Family court gave her all 3 kids back, and that baby boy is dead. And for anything else, I'll let y'all listen to that podcast. It's something everyone should listen to that has anything to do with anything in child cases, whether it's family court or criminal court. But
yeah, no, thank you so much. And I'm going to put a link to that in the chat so people can find season 6. Could you explain the sort of analogy that you make with pedophilic disorder to the audience so they can kind of understand what we're talking about?
Right. And, I call them commonalities with pedophilia.
Okay.
There's grooming of the child as they get older. There's manipulation of adults around the child. With sex abuse, it's to get access to the child for sexual behavior. And this abuse is grooming of the medical community to commit the abuse, grooming of the legal community to not face criminal charges, to get the child back. And I'm going to tell you, I won't say most of the time, but we don't have good stats on it, but a lot of the time, family court returns these victims to their offender, right? So you have that. The child loves their offenders, usually their mother. 2017 literary study, 95.6% of the offenders were mothers. So you have a lot of these commonalities with pedophilia that you see. And again, it's a compulsion. They don't stop.
Yeah. And I think Scott and I would land on the term compulsive behavior. That's what we utilized in therapy and assessment and treatment with these folks, because addiction does get a little wonky. And we also want to not compare and contrast someone who's doing something, like acting out in a pedophilic way with someone who's struggling with a lot of the consensus is a disease at this point. So obviously just clinical opinion, but I love how in the book you highlight that there are rarely phenomenon where it's both a mental illness and a crime. And these both kind of fit under that umbrella in terms of pedophilic disorder, where it is a mental health diagnosis and we have to treat it as such. And we know it's incredibly pervasive and dangerous for the community. Hence the reason for having such wraparound treatment, working closely with parole and probation and this containment model, not unlike, a mother who's going to be doing this and continue to be a danger because of a pervasive mental illness in the future. And Scott and I just, in our newest episode that we just recorded today, talked a lot about how we're really bad at predicting human behavior, but we can assess risk really well. And the old adage of looking to past behavior for future behavior indications is pretty powerful. And I'm so glad through this book learning that there was somebody like you and hopefully others that were really focused on that. And how could you not be once you start peeling back these stories? It's a really beautifully written book. I would love for you to sort of share with us and your audience how you met your co-author, Andrea Dunlap, and how this book even came about.
I met Andrea at a training in San Diego in 2020, just right before the pandemic. Dr. Mark Feldman, who was one of my early mentors on this, he's another person I reached out to after I got that first case. Him and Michael Trent, an attorney in Houston who had tried a couple of these cases. Dr. Feldman had connected with Andrea. Andrea's sister, Andrea believes, is committing and getting away with this abuse currently in Seattle. Family court gave the kids back to her sister without even listening to her own family on the matter. And so she had got drawn in through one of her other novels where she basically wrote her sister's story as fiction. And she came to the training. We had the training. We talked afterwards. You know, she was not, Dr. Feldman had nominated her to be on the American Professional Society of the Abuse of Children's Medical Child Abuse Committee. And just as we're talking, you know, people would say to me all the time, you should really write a book. I'm like, yeah, no one cares what I have to say, I promise you. So, you know, she told me she was an author. She'd written 4 fictional novels. And I'm like, you know, I just jokingly, kind of half jokingly say, you know, people tell me all the time I should write a book about these stories because they can be a bit wild. And she's like, Mike, no, people say that to me all the time. And in my head, I think, no, you really shouldn't. She's like, no, but I think you should. And, you know, it's funny because we talk now and she's like, she said at that time, I'm thinking I should really do this, but I don't need to jump into anything. And at the same time, I'm thinking, well, no one cares what I have to say. So how can I get this 4-time author to co-author this with me? And that's kind of how we connected. I tried to write it, but no one wants to hear on this date at this time I went here, on this date at this time I went here because I'm a cop.
Right. Just the facts.
And yeah, just facts. Yeah, very Joe Friday-ish.
For sure.
All the old people in the thing. So yeah, so about 3 months in, she's like, why don't I just help you co-author this? I'm like, yep.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So you finally convinced her, kind of like I convinced Scott to do this podcast with me 8 years ago.
Well, I never asked her. That's something she had to come to on her own.
Okay.
Well, clearly she saw the potential there. You know, she saw the hard work. I mean, as you were talking, one of the things that came back to me vividly after listening to the audiobook is just how many times in your career through various cases, how many times you were stymied by changes in administration, in changes in structure, political infighting, all of this. Because I got to tell you, like, I have no patience for that. And so I really don't. And that's not a good thing because we have to, in order to get shit done, we have to go through the channels and be able to surf those challenges. I just think it speaks so incredibly to your resiliency and your determination and your care for these victims is that you were willing, I'm going to see this through. I don't care how long it takes. Is that a quality you've always had?
Well, you can throw stupidity in there too. It's okay. And stubbornness. You know, I know the consequences for the victims if I don't do anything. And, you know, when I left the DA's office to go to the sheriff's office, I took a 2 pay grade cut. I didn't do it for money. I did it because I wanted, you know, we had 2 of these cases sitting on detectives' desks that they weren't doing anything on. And I adopted those 2 cases and we arrested both those offenders. And the sheriff brought me over for people interested. The sheriff is a big part of that book. One of my first victims in this abuse is his now adopted daughter. And he has been, through all the politics, a stalwart on this abuse. He can only control what he can control, but he's been great. And, you know, those politics still continue. And it's a big reason I retired. They're still continuing to this day.
And they always will. And Scott and I are government workers, and we understand the stubbornness and stupidity, I think, are a very special part of that mix to be resilient. Actually, on the note of resiliency, as Scott was mentioning, I'm going to deviate just a little bit from where we were going, but the resiliency certainly has to be embedded and just have to be there in a person or not to start taking on these cases. What did you do or what do you do? What advice do you have for other folks working in these types of cases to take care of yourself? You know, obviously we talk a lot about that. We focused a lot on law enforcement, mental health on this show. I'm just curious for somebody who worked child abuse cases for so long, what your special formula was.
I go to a lot, you know, my outlet's mainly music. I go to a lot of music shows. You know, I have things I do outside of work. I've got a nice pontoon boat down in Granbury, and there's something very peaceful about sitting on Lake Granbury, watching a sunset on that boat. You know, I'm not a big fisherman, but I love just being on the water and in the water.
Yeah, nature is so healing.
Anywhere. Yes. You know, I'm going to Canada in a couple of weeks to see my best friend from high school. He lives up there just outside of Whistler. And I'll spend a lot of time in nature there. And, you know, just getting outside. Exercise is very important, obviously, to anyone listening. And, you know, just take care of your mental health. And like I tell young detectives, you can only control what you can control. I have to tell myself that a lot here lately. But you can only control what you can control. You can't make others do their job. So you have to let that go. And that's something I've had to let go.
Yeah. You know, not all of that seems so important to prioritize when you're in it, because you're spending a lot of mental power on the job and thinking about it when you're not there. And whether, you know, it was Obviously, you have more time on your hands now, but you hit on so many things. There's the physical wellness piece. Taking care of your body is going to be the foundation to all of that. You talked about the social piece, right? Getting to go visit your friend now, which is probably something you've been putting on the back burner for a long time. Just making time for human connection is so important, especially when you're focusing on these cases that are highlighting the worst of humanity. We need to be able to have that moments to go, oh, wait, there are good moments in the world as well as your life personally. But yeah, being in nature and live music, there is like nothing like live music. It is.
To me, there's nothing more healing.
Yeah.
And that's me.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for reviewing that. I think that's good for other people to hear. And I'm so glad that you've passed that on, to other detectives as well, because everybody needs to start thinking about their wellness as early as possible. Clearly, as you've mentioned already, this has been a very tricky type of abuse to observe and to investigate, whether legally or medically, and for people to just accept what's happening. That seems to be, a biggie. Aside from some of the holes that you talked about in terms of like the medical professionals' review and diagnoses here, why do you think that is? Why do you think there is this hesitation or even resistance to accepting what's really going on in these cases?
Well, I mean, you're challenging the societal perception of motherhood. And a lot of people in society don't want that challenged. I've had senior detectives who can't wrap their head around this form of abuse. They just can't get it. They can't get past, well, why'd the doctor do it? Why'd the doctor do it? The analogy I like to use is, we don't charge a bank teller for accepting a forged check. And they have much more training on how to spot a forged check than doctors have, pediatricians have to spot this abuse. But, a lot of them still can't get their heads wrapped around it. And, there's a lot of human nature involved in this. It's a lot of work. These can be, if it's a falsification case, it can be a 6-month investigation. And it's a lot of work for something you don't really know what you should need to do. And you have 40 other cases on your caseload. It's easier just to say, well, this CPS issue.
Yeah.
Or, well, if you're an attorney, well, I don't agree there's probable cause. Or I don't want to take this trial. I don't think we can win. Or if you're a family court judge, keep in mind, family court hearings are like 1 or 2 hours, and you can't do that on these cases.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 1 or 2 hours. That's all they give.
No.
And so a lot of times what you'll have happen where these cases can fall apart is because that court hearing for final custody is going to happen long before a criminal trial. That's going to happen probably 7-8 months in. And criminal trials where I'm at, 2 years out minimum. So if the family court gives that child back to the offender, your criminal case is done. I have not had one time yet where the child has been given back where the prosecutor has moved forward with criminal charges.
That makes sense.
And interestingly enough, even on the Jessica Jones case, where I had a confession, evidence in her purse, evidence in the child's blood, the CPS attorneys for the DA's office did not even move forward on termination of rights. They simply made dad managing conservator, gave mom no visitation, and checked out of the case. So now dad has to go spend $20,000, $30,000 in family court to do the job that they should have done.
Oh my goodness. Well, and what you're really talking about is challenging people's beliefs, whether it's about the medical field or about motherhood, cultural beliefs, like deeply ingrained beliefs. Did you see, not just in investigating it and trying to get people on board for helping that, but did you find it when it did eventually, when you found cases that went to trial with the jury as well? I mean, that's got to be a huge part of trying to educate them on that.
We've only had one case go to trial. And, let's talk numbers for a second. Since March of 2019, I don't know the number I've investigated, or reports, right? Reports that I've investigated. Doesn't mean it's happening. Probably over 30, but we filed criminal charges on 13 offenders, and we have 8 that have pled guilty since that time. So none have gone to trial since they came to the sheriff's office. The one that we had go to trial when I was at the DA's office, the jury hung 11-1, and that's the sheriff's daughter's case, for conviction. And the one holdout was a white male, 65-year-old dentist. Interesting. And I heard him say, we went into the jury room because the jury agreed to talk with us after the verdict. And we went to the jury room, and I heard him say, just in the corner, because he's kind of by himself, and he just goes, she's not smart enough to do this. Well, she's smart enough to fool you.
Yeah.
Well, dumb like a fox, like we used to say.
Right.
I mean, that is the part I think that makes it even more important for determined law enforcement is that part of it is what Shiloh was saying about how our culture on one level just doesn't want to admit that mothers would A, be capable of doing this, and B, would consider doing this. Like, who would do this to their children? Because we're looking at women through a very narrow lens. And part of the work I do in my day-to-day work is with very severely mentally ill adults. But that does not mean they have any impairment necessarily in their intellect. They can be very smart, very manipulative. And it's just interesting because I think that dentist represents or is sort of a reflection of many of the doctors that couldn't, like, of course, why wouldn't I believe this mother giving me this 7-year history on my child? They wouldn't lie. They wouldn't actually lie. They care about their children. Yeah.
Right. Doctors are and shouldn't be police detectives, right?
No.
They shouldn't have to suspect everyone that comes to them.
Right.
And you can't blame people who have no training. And we tried to get a bill passed last time just for an hour of CLEs for doctors, cops, CPS, anyone who would deal with this. And our legislature wouldn't do it.
It's also every procedural medical show that has been on for the past 20 years has multiple episodes about Munchausen by proxy. And you would think that alone, because those shows are popular with doctors, either they love it because it feels realistic or it's a hate watch. Like, that's not how it works at all. But you would think that by now they would have picked up on, oh, maybe I should be looking for this at work.
Well, and, there's just real quick, I'll cover like the difference between legal and what is in the DSM, right? Just because it's in the DSM doesn't mean it's not a crime, right? The legal definition of sanity is knowing what you're doing and knowing it's wrong when you're doing it. And they display that in spades all the time in this abuse. And I think with, you got to realize that hospitals are businesses. And with any business, some want to do the right things. Some necessarily don't. All of them should be getting their doctor's training on this abuse. Just from a legal standpoint of avoiding a lawsuit, either if they don't see it and the child dies and they get sued by family, or if they do see it and report and they get sued by an offender who gets away with it.
Right. Yeah. Or parents trying to say, like, how dare you, right, accuse me of this, and some sort of civil litigation that comes of that. Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, and we see that we see that all the time. If family court returns a child, the criminal case gets dismissed, if there even is a criminal case. And then the offender runs to the media because she is attention seeking. She claims she's innocent.
There you go.
And then she may run to your legislature and she may say, look, this is a child abuse panic. I have been falsely accused. Family court declared me innocent. Well, I mean, it's not what family court does, but that's what they're going to say.
Yeah.
And now it's out there because they've said it and they've gone to media.
Yeah.
One of the really successful LA Times podcasts over the last few years, the first series was called Dr. Death. And that was about a surgeon, a wildly disordered and incompetent surgeon in Texas who got away with being so incompetent and maiming and actually killing people because the hospitals were just like, let's just get him out of here. Let's pass it on. Do you feel like there's any parallel in the medical community to that with, like, well, let's just give this mom what she wants so that she won't, go to the media about us? Is there any sort of complicity in that way?
I mean, I don't think there is. I think for the most part, I don't think it's gotten to that point. I think for the most part, they are just fooled by these offenders. They're highly manipulative. They present very well. If you look at the Olivia Gant case in Colorado, that child ended up dying, got put in hospice, and mom cut off her food and water, basically starved her to death. But, the hospital, one thing I do want to say to doctors, you don't chart Munchausen by proxy and not report. If you're charting abuse, you report abuse.
Oh, sure.
And I see that all the time in medical records from facilities where they're charting it and no one's ever reporting it.
Oof.
And doctors just tend to see this differently. They tend to think they have to have absolute proof. And again, that's not their job. That's CPS and law enforcement's job.
Yep.
They're currently terrible at it, but that is CPS and law enforcement's job. So I don't think it's intentional. And I think it's always case dependent, right? But, Olivia Gant, she was all over Colorado Children's. They did advertising with her. She was a very, very cute little girl who presented very well.
So she was like their
really
poster
sick.
child.
Yeah, she was like a poster child.
Yeah. Wow.
She did a cooking show with Miss Colorado. She rode out with she rode out with the police department, got a badge from the chief of police, rode out with the fire department. Some of the typical things that you see.
Yeah. So particularly in the last case presented in the book, you highlight how difficult it is for each child to really get justice. We're hoping in the time that we have left that you can tell us a bit about the Mary Welch case and your struggles there.
Yes, well, and Mary Welch had several things going for her. Her family had a bunch of money to hire the right attorneys who knew the right people. And she also was an attractive female. And we all like to think that doesn't matter in court. I'll tell you, that matters in court.
Oh, yeah.
I sat on the stand and watched her manipulate the family court judge right in front of my face. Knew we were going to lose that case in family court when it happened. She was indicted in Tarrant County for a criminal attempt to injure a child, serious bodily injury, and endangering a child. She had gotten a brain shunt placed, taken the child out of state to get a brain shunt placed when she was told that the child did not need it. So I had affidavits from everyone. I talked to the doctor in Minnesota who told me that he never even did an MRI. He just trusted her history. At the same time, she was presenting herself as a NICU nurse, and she had no nursing license. She had never been a nurse. By the way, she's still presenting herself as a NICU nurse, even though she is mayor pro tem of Grandview, Texas.
Great.
How about that?
Lovely.
I'm sorry. I have to take a moment here.
I know. Nothing drives Scott and I more nuts than people saying that they are more educated and trained and in their experience than they actually are.
She also claimed to be a cancer survivor, and I could find no record of that ever happening.
Well, that's pretty well spelled out in the book. I thought that they did a great job with this. I was unaware until we were preparing for this show that she's now actually an elected official, a politician in Texas. And that is, it's disturbing on a number of levels that I won't go too far into, but like it goes to this presentation of a personality disorder that the more you say it, I'm just going to keep saying it until everybody believes it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they make it real. Like, I've been a victim of this. And that's frightening how powerful that projection of delusion can be.
And she absolutely played the victim. When she ran for election in 2022, she said I was a corrupt cop. She said that I filed the Medicaid fraud charges on her. I didn't. The Texas attorney, I didn't even investigate that. The attorney general's office did. So there are multiple lies that are now coming out that the citizens down there and politicians down there are now aware of. Now, whether they do anything about it, we'll see. She was recently appointed to the Johnson County Central Appraisal District Board. So someone who has committed Medicaid fraud now has access to everyone in Johnson County's Social Security numbers.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
And she has told people that she wants to run for higher office.
I'm sure she does. She does. Yeah.
I don't know if that will happen now. I got involved because she posted about wanting to head a human trafficking organization, and I'll be darned if I'm going to stay silent. And I had stayed silent. I'm like, that's Johnson County's issue. I wrote the book. Y'all figure it out. But when that came out, I actually made a social media post and said, okay, here are the actual facts, people of Johnson County, and called out all of the things she had lied about me in 2022. And then that event got canceled. I ended up talking to the state rep who was pushing Mary on the people of Johnson County. So she is not going to head that organization. I don't know what her political future will hold. That's up to the voters of Johnson County. I don't live there. They have the information now.
Very true. This has to be like the epitome of those cases where we're talking about where you have to realize there are just some things you can't control. You can put your best investigative foot and mind forward, and sometimes the chips are going to fall where they fall.
Well, in season 6 of that podcast, Nobody Should Believe Me, Mary is very similar to that offender. I will call her an offender because she was convicted for her daughter. But that offender then went on after her youngest died under extremely suspicious conditions. I will put it that way. She was director of patient care advocacy for the Guthrie Jackson Foundation, which is a $70 million 501c3.
Wow.
About her son's disease, whether he had it or not.
Wow. Astonishing. I mean, can you tell us a little bit? I mean, I know we've talked about season 6 of that show. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you feel like that season particularly holds such high importance in terms of awareness and change for this crime and folks to know about it?
It lays the system bare. It lays the errors of the system in plain sight, and all of the system. Family courts failures, medical professional failures. There's a recorded conversation with the neurologist who diagnosed this. She talked to the oldest sister, cooperated in this, and she has a one-party recorded phone call with that neurologist who talks about everything and says she didn't know that that child had a diagnosis and that the child did come in with a blood infection, just like the sister had from the poor feces into the tracheotomy. And the child did have a central line, so mom did have access to the blood. So it just shows that failure. And, still failing. I've attempted to refer that to Alabama police authorities, and no one is interested in taking up and looking because it's never been investigated. That child's death has never been investigated by police.
Wow.
And again, just like the Olivia Gant case, she got that child put in hospice, even though the disease he was diagnosed with is not a terminal disease, and cut off food and water.
Mm. The book highlights 3 main cases, and we talked about the Mary Welch case, and they are all so different. And I thought that was such a poignant, beautiful part of the book because there is no one size fits all with this. The women were so incredibly different, whether their modus operandi of doing this or just the families and backgrounds they come from. It is all encompassing of who the perpetrators are. And I wonder if that was tough for you and Andrea to pick 3 cases. I mean, I'm sure you wanted to really highlight the differences between them, but did that take you guys a while to figure out which ones to highlight?
Actually, no. When I initially approached her, I told her I have 3 cases, 2 with a good outcome, 1 with a bad outcome that I want to show. Mm-hmm. And she, we debated the order. Well, because she's like, I don't want to leave on a down note. I'm like, well, I don't want to leave people with a false impression that these cases are all easy peasy. And I thought we cleaned that up a little bit in the conclusion where we come back and we talk about, I go to the sheriff's office and good things start to happen again. Mm. Yeah. But I had those 3 cases were immediately on my mind. And, thank you, Mary Welch, for becoming an elected official. Otherwise, we would have had to give her a pseudonym.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Okay. Well, we have put the link in the chat. I know folks we've kind of been doing a little bit of a book series. You're a 3rd author throughout the summer that we've spoken to, and people have been really excited to gobble up some of these books. So, Scott and I can't recommend this one highly enough. Before we go, we do have some rapid fire questions if you're ready to entertain those.
Absolutely.
So
fire away.
When we were supposed to originally meet, it was 4th of July weekend. What did you do for 4th of July?
I was at the lake in Granbury, and I was enjoying time on my boat. And the beautiful thing about the lake, it's out in the county, so there are no fireworks restrictions. So I just go out and sit in the little cove right in front of the house on my boat. And, I may have a beer or 2, and I just watch fireworks go off all around the lake, just neighborhood shows. And
awesome.
Did that with some neighbors and hung out with some friends. And, I've got really good neighbors down there. Shout out to Terry and Shannon.
Aww.
And so that was my 4th of July weekend.
Great. Do you have a favorite cop TV show or a favorite cop movie?
Oh, God, I don't really watch cop TV shows.
I don't watch
a lot of TV, period. I will tell your viewing audiences, none of them are realistic.
See?
None of them.
It's like the medical shows, right? We have our own version of saying, oh my gosh, you never hold a weapon like that. Why didn't they make their gun ready to fire before they went into that building? Okay, so I know you mentioned Whistler. Anywhere else you're looking forward to traveling to next?
Yeah, I'm going to see a concert in Colorado at Red Rocks. We're actually doing back-to-back concerts.
I went for the first time last year. It was incredible.
Beautiful.
Oh, how cool.
Good.
Amazing experience.
Yeah. Kind of a bucket list concert.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay, and that's part of our next question then. What is on your bucket list? What are you most looking forward to in retirement?
Traveling, I think what everyone looks forward to. What I'm doing now, a little plug for myself, I also do trainings. I'm trying to get trainings out there on this abuse. I've got 2 trainings coming up in September, 2 in October, 1 in November. And I train any organization that'll touch this abuse, be it a child advocacy center, hospital, schools, because a lot of times teachers see this abuse. They see that the presentation in the child is not what mom is saying it is. So pretty much anywhere I will do trainings for. I'm doing a training next week, as a matter of fact, at the Crimes Against Children's Conference in Dallas.
Oh, okay.
I'm co-training with Dad Derek Jones on the Benadryl poisoning case, the Jessica Jones case.
Wow.
And that's going to be hopefully a pretty eye-opening presentation for prosecutors.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be so powerful.
Yeah, in the last couple of minutes, because this is what we're supposed to end with, is a rapid fire. But I have one more, serious question is, from your perspective and all your experience, everything you've been through with this milieu, is there anything that you think that the community can do? What can listening citizens do to help prevent these kind of cases?
Yeah, I think the most important thing about this is that if you suspect this abuse, report this abuse. Realize nothing may be done. CPS in my state has no policies. They provide their CPS investigators no training. Same in almost every state. I think Arizona and Arkansas are the only states that have policies on this abuse. So just if you suspect, you report. And, the red flags, Dr. Kaufman told me a long time ago, multiple medical symptoms over multiple body systems that don't make medical sense. And, I'll throw in with that a large social media presence, attention-seeking behavior. A lot of these offenders, whenever someone important in their life has a good event going, all of a sudden then the child will become sick, to kind of shift the attention back to the offender and the child. So, and we can go through a ton of red flags.
That's perfect. I mean, I think just empowering people to say it's okay to report. Again, like you were saying with teachers or medical personnel, you are not the investigator. You don't have to be 100% sure. Contact the people that will do that.
And for those who listen to season 6, it should make you very angry that law enforcement hasn't stepped up yet. If it does and you want to do something, reach out. You can reach out to Birmingham Police Department on social media, or you can reach out to the Alabama State Bureau of Investigations, either one. Both have been notified about it. And so far, neither of them have reached out to Andrea or the oldest sister, who both possess physical evidence in that case.
Okay. Well, we will, obviously this is going to live on our YouTube for a while, and we're going to put all the links to all of what you're talking about today so people can try and help out in any way they can. And if, Scott and I catch wind of people that definitely need this training out in our area, and folks that we work with, and co-responder models and all sorts of different intersections of criminal justice and medical and mental health fields, we will pass along your information.
Oh, and another good thing to point out, especially to you guys, since you have law enforcement contacts, I consult for free, like I'm still a reserve officer. So if any law enforcement needs consultation and is willing to reach out, here's a shocking thing. Cops have egos. Sometimes they're not willing to reach out. I know. It's shocking. I do it for free. So they can reach out. They can call me.
Very
and how's
nice.
the best way for people to find you specifically for pursuing training?
MikeWeberConsulting.com. That's Weber with 1 B. They can reach out to me there through my email. Fantastic. And I will get back to them fairly quickly. And guys, the amount of people that I've had reach out to me since this book came out saying, hey, can you help me? This is happening and no one's doing anything about it. It's getting to the point of beyond my capacity to answer the emails.
Sure.
Well, I mean, look, I'm going to gently chide you. You have worked your ass off and you're clearly a subject matter expert. And, it's okay for you to charge. It's okay for you, especially if you need to have an infrastructure where you want to get more of this information out and serialize your ability to train. And that requires funds. So, it's okay. Just offering you a little bit of therapy there. It's okay to get yourself paid.
I charge, trust me, I charge any family court stuff or anything like that. And I don't do expert testimony. I'm not insured. I don't want to do expert testimony. I don't do record review. So basically right now I'm just running a training business, and I will consult, with people if they need advice on their cases. And I do charge people from time to time. Well, just regular people who call in.
Sure. No, that's lovely. Thank you so much for, law enforcement agencies certainly don't have the funding that people think they do, especially for something like this. You're getting a lot of thank yous in our chats here. We want to thank you for your service, for how you have been an advocate for these kiddos over the duration of your career, for writing this book and finding the right partner to do it with. That's so important. Yes. It's a wonderful, wonderful book that we highly recommend. So, and thank you, I guess, for your time again so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks to everyone who's watching live, and hello to everyone who's watching this at a later time. And Scott and I will see you next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Bye, guys.
Bye, folks.
We sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today. LA Not So Confidential is part of Alienist Entertainment and the Crawl Space Media Network. Each episode is hosted, produced, and written by Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh. Our post-production editing and sweetening magic is handled by the multi-talented Jason Usry of Ear Cult Productions.
Our theme music, entitled Cool Vibes Film Noir, is composed and performed by the talented Kevin MacLeod. He graciously allows us to use his music via a Creative Commons attribution license. Please check out all of Kevin's amazing work on YouTube.
All of the resources for each episode can be found on our website at www.la-not-so-confidential.com. You can find us on Blue Sky and Instagram at LA Not So Podcast. On TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, we are at LA Not So Confidential. Media inquiries and bookings are scheduled at alienistentertainment@gmail.com.
Once a month, we go live on YouTube on a Saturday afternoon. So stay tuned to our social media announcements to join our interactive broadcast entitled Behind the Couch, where we interview guests on a number of psych, criminal justice, and true crime topics.
And lastly, we'd be honored if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/LA Not So Podcast. With a subscription, you get an ad-free listening experience, additional content, host interaction, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming live events, social gatherings, and super cool merch.
So thanks for listening, and join us next time on LA
Not So
Confidential.